It's 1:30 Yukon time. And I invite Ichan to begin the presentation today. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Max. Hello, everyone. My name is Ichan Zhang. I'm the manager of Funds and Labs at Hot Docs. Welcome to this Doc Ignite session. And first of all, I'd like to thank Max, Ashley, and Available Light Festival team for organizing this. So throughout this session, there will be some quick questions and answers between us, and you can raise your hands whenever you have a question, and I will try to answer them. It would be great if you could grab some paper and pen or pencil for the exercises. You can either do it now or later when that comes. And I will send out handouts in the chat as we go along, and then you can keep all of them and print them out later if you'd like. And I'll also put videos like Vimeo links in the chat as we go, just to avoid any technical issues with streaming. So if we're all good, I'll start the presentation. Max, could you share your screen and start the slides?
Sure, just give me a sec.
Sure.
So we need to share the screen and...
Wonderful. Thank you. So Doc Ignite is a series of workshops designed to reach filmmakers at all stages of production. And as a market that receives thousands of applications each year for pitching, funding, and mentorship, we see the strengths and weaknesses of filmmakers who are seeking out financiers, audiences, collaborators, and we hope these workshops can be an educational resource for you. And this workshop has been co-created with two filmmakers working in documentary, Lucy Taylor and Dan Ashby. So our case study project, Beautiful Poison, what a Hot Docs commission. We created this workshop for filmmakers to prepare them for moving from what's on paper in a treatment to how to break down scenes to ensure coverage of the story all the way to the edit. So this presentation is designed for emerging filmmakers who may not have shot for screen before, or for sophomore or mid-level filmmakers who have a small number of films under their belt. And for those with more experience, it's a chance to see another filmmaker's process. If you have any questions at any point, just put up your hand and I'll try my best to answer. Max, can you put the next slide, please? So as the name suggests, during this workshop, we're going to learn how to take your film from treatment to screen. That is, you'll learn how to prepare your film for a shoot and then for the edit. We want to give you some practical takeaways that you can work through and come back to anytime you draw a blank in this process. So this is just one way to do it, and it may not work for every editor on every film. But if you're not sure where to begin, we have some techniques to get you started. Today, we'll be focusing on story. And of course, there is more to do when you're planning a shoot in terms of production management, logistics, lighting, lenses. We'll be taking an editorial and creative focus instead. How do you work out the structure and shape of your story, and how can you then translate that into a shooting plan? So for the purpose of this presentation, we'll call our plan a storyboard, and I'll talk about what that is later. Every film does have a story at its heart, even films that wear that story lightly or aren't necessarily plot-driven or more experimental. Next slide, please. So by the end of Module 1, you will know how to use your treatment to write a storyboard or a scene-by-scene breakdown of your film. Then in Module 2, we will learn how to use that storyboard to prepare your shoot, how to frame your interview questions to get the best answers, how to make a shot list, and what to do on location when things go wrong. And finally, in Module 3, we'll discuss how to work with your editor. Next slide, please. So throughout the workshop, we'll use the case study of the short film Beautiful Poison, the one directed and produced by Dan and Lucy. I will share the treatment and synopsis with you in the chat now, and you can have a quick skim. Let me, okay. Chat. Okay, just sent. Can everyone see that?
I can see it.
Okay, great. So Beautiful Poison is a 10-minute film about an artist in small town Ohio who has come up with a way to clean pollution out of the local rivers and turn it into paint. So we're going to show you documents and examples from this film, show you the trailer, and at the end of the session, the film in full to see its progress. So if you already have your own treatment and you have one today, then that's great. And you can keep that in mind as well as we go through these exercises. Next slide, please. At this point, let's assume you're a director and you already have a finished treatment or one-pager outlining your film. This means you probably already have given a lot of thought to your film's key themes, perhaps the tone you're aiming for, who your characters will be, shooting locations and crew. But what should you do next? Next slide. You're probably not ready to start filming yet. Before you do, you need to decide the shape and structure of your story. We're going to use a document template we've designed to help you work out two things: what you want to say and how you're going to say it. But before you can fill that in, there are some things you should do. These are our starting points. Next slide. First, be sure what story you want to tell. If you haven't already, at this point, you should write a log line for your film of no more than a sentence or two. Your log line is the main story you want to get across, distilled. And bear in mind that even if your story is very straightforward, there are probably lots of different potential versions of it and ways you could tell it. Writing a log line is a starting point to help you make a number of decisions about what you think the story is. And this act of distilling the story to one or two sentences will help you to make a number of decisions about your film that will carry through from storyboard to the shooting plan and beyond. And having this log line can also help you in applications for development funding, etc. So it's good to have the intentions for your film worked out earlier than later. Next slide, please. So for Beautiful Poison, Dan and Lucy wrote this log line. In a tiny farmer coal community where poisoned rivers glow a lurid orange, an artist has a crazy idea to extract the pollution and turn it into paint. Next slide, please. So I have a question for you. What decisions can you tell the filmmakers have already made by deciding to write this log line? Anybody wants to answer? You can put up your hand. Activism. You can, Max, can you enable them to talk? Or you can also do that, I guess.
People should be able to unmute themselves.
Okay.
And speak if a bit of a free for all is okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to hear people's voices, people,
Yes.
please unmute yourselves and
But yeah, I forgot to mention, yeah, this is a very like interactive session, so you can just talk. Anybody wants to answer?
Ova, are you going to say something?
Well, I just unmuted myself, but what did they decide?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not sure what the question is when you say what did they decide?
Like what decisions did they make to include what in their log line? What decisions did they make?
Okay, well they showed a huge issue that has occurred, like an extreme an extreme catastrophe that has occurred in their community, and then they have where this artist is going to turn this around into something interesting and beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah,
so I
that's great.
guess they decided like a big part of this seems to be the location where the film is taking place,
Mm,
and
that's
then
definitely one of
yeah,
it.
the key
Mhm.
protagonist, I guess, or
Yes.
I have something also that the word community implies that people
Exactly.
care about each other.
Exactly. Yes.
Community affected.
Mm-hmm. So I'll move on, and can we turn to the next slide? So those are all like great answers. So the log line takes the artist as a subject above all the other characters. So the artist is going to be the main character of the film. And later, this may influence a decision to put him in the opening of the film, or make him the narrator, or influence any number of other decisions about his function in the story. And then the logline sets out a problem, but also a solution. So turning pollution into paint. So this is a quite a simple narrative structure where everything in a story is driven by the artist's idea, rather than say the community campaigning for change, and which could be an equally valid jump off point for a story about a polluted river. And then the logline also focuses on one setting, the tiny former coal community. And just as I think one of you mentioned, which is a decision to do an intimate portrait of a local area and community, and rather than a sweeping look at wider scale pollution in the region or country. So those are the decisions the filmmakers made. Next slide, please. So you can see that writing the logline helps you make a number of decisions about your story that may influence what and how you shoot. And as you plan the next stages of your film, keep coming back to your logline to make sure you're still on track. Are the scenes you're writing still helping to tell this story? Next slide, please. And second starting point, think about the audience. So who do you want to watch the film? This will help you think about what parts of the story they will likely find interest in, and how much context or background information you might need to provide. And consider why people may be interested and what might keep them with the story until the end. So there are lots of possible answers to this, and none of them are necessarily right or wrong, but it's good to decide early what you want the audience to take away from the film. Is it intrigue? Are you building suspense? Is it immersion into a mood or feeling you're trying to assess? Is it education about an important topic, or giving them a glimpse into a world they would never get to see otherwise? So there are many, many options, but like your logline, once you've decided this, you should keep it front and center when you go to make a storyboard and shooting plan. Are the scenes you're writing going to further this aim? Next slide, please. And another starting point is pre-interviews. So this is the time to do your pre-interviews, or a series of more detailed conversations with each of the people you're planning to film. This doesn't have to be too formal. In fact, it's often better to get to know them over coffee or beer. You can ask them questions about their motivations, ask them to describe or show you around the locations that you'll be filming. Don't just focus on facts. Ask them about their emotions, feelings, and how they feel about like different aspects of the story you're telling. And by the end of these conversations, you're aiming to know enough to decide each person's role in the film. Which part of the story can they tell? What information or emotions will they bring to each scene? You might say, I don't want to ask the exact questions in a pre-interview. I'll ask on camera. I want genuine reactions the first time. That is valid too. It really depends on the film you're making, but you can ask them questions that determine what their personalities are like, or determine how they might answer a question or their stance on an issue. And then you can accumulate that information now. Next slide, please. When you write your storyboard, which we will look at soon, you will need to know enough about each character to plan in detailed way what their sound bites might sound like before you've even started shooting. And ideally, by the time you interview them on camera, you should have some idea as to how they're likely to answer your questions. Next slide, please. Even though your film is a documentary, it can still be helpful to think of it as having a 3-act structure and to consider using traditional storytelling techniques. Most stories can be broken down into acts. You may or may not want these to be explicit to the audience, for example, with chapter headings, but being aware of them can help you to create a structure that drives the film and keeps the audience gripped. If you play around with the basic 3-act structure, beginning, a middle, and end, in the first act, you introduce your main character and show some of the world and the inciting incident or problem that sets them on their journey. And the second act features the main action, conflicts, or turning points, and ends with some kind of resolution in the final act. This exact structure might not work for every story, but it's worth thinking about at the outset about whether any of the common storytelling models could work for a film before you storyboard. Next slide, please. Finally, the storyboard. So at this point, you've given your film a lot of thought. You started with a treatment or one-pager, spelling out your initial ideas. You boiled down a logline, thought about your audience, got detailed information about all of your characters, and started to think about a possible structure. It's time to get your film down in one place. And this is the point where you, the director, clear a day in your schedule and really starts to hash things out. Again, this storyboard will help you plan 2 things, the what and the how. Next slide, please. So what do you want to say and how you're going to say it? Next slide. Or it helps to think it from the audience perspective. What will they learn and how does it unfold? So one common mistake is to focus too much on a how before you've really worked out the what. So let's have a look at a blank template. I'll put the story template in the chat and then you can take a look. Okay. Next slide, please. So this is our storyboard. I think everyone can see that in the chat. In this case, it doesn't involve pictures, but it's similar to our conventional storyboard in that it breaks down your film scene by scene. You're really imagining and planning your film from beginning to end here. As you can see, there's a lot to work out. You will eventually get into all the details, but you don't have to do everything straight away. You can build up the details into different columns as you go and keep coming back to make changes. This is a very fluid document and there will be lots of moving around. You won't get it right first time and that's okay. It's just a process. And first, let's look at the second column on this template, which is called What We Learn. What does the audience find out here? And you're going to fill it in this column first. Next slide, please. So to do this, you need to break down your story to its bare bones. It's a list of every idea or fact in your story. That means everything that is going to happen in the film or everything your audience will find out during the film from beginning to end. And keep this as simple as you can. You are not building scenes yet, just writing a list of ideas shortly written and write them down in any order at first and do it quickly without agonizing over it. You can add and move things later. Next slide, please. So let's do this first for our case study film, Beautiful Poison, and here are some ideas you might want to start with. Like Millfield is a small town, its rivers glow orange. The orange color is caused by pollution. The pollution is caused by abandoned coal mines. A local artist has an idea to clean the rivers. The artist says, I feel horrified by the pollution and so on. So it's a very simple list. And these are the foundations on which you will build the rest of your story. So write down every fact you can think of that you expect to come out in your film. Even for a short film, this is going to be quite a long list. And for those familiar with the fiction process, you can equate this to a beat sheet, like beats of how the story progresses, beat by beat. Next slide, please. So then it's time to start changing the order of the list and putting them in the order you want them in the film. So in the what, you are also deciding how much information you want to give the audience right away and how much information you're going to hold back, and if and where you're going to build tension and intrigue. It helps if you can learn to see your storyboard as a set of moving parts. For now, nothing is fixed, and you can move these ideas up and down as much as you need to make your story stronger or clearer or more gripping. Next slide, please. So let's go back to the opening of Beautiful Poison. You might decide that the most shocking fact here is that the river glows orange. You want the audience to find out that first, so you move it to the top of your list. And next, you want them to understand that the orange color isn't natural. It's caused by pollution. And that's another shocking fact. So we'll put that second. And next, you want your audience to know our location. So you might introduce them to Millfield, the small town. We'll put that third. And you're beginning to make decisions about how to order your story. One other way to do this is to write each point on a Post-it and move it around on your walls, as editors sometimes do. Next slide, please. So once you played with the what for a little while, it's time to build in the how. In this template, you would start with the scene breakdown column under how. This is when you start to build scenes for your film. This is when you decide how the story unfolds. And look at each idea in your what column. And next to it, in your first how column, try to work out what the best scene might be to illustrate that part of the story. Sometimes this is obvious or instinctive, like if you want your audience to know that the rivers glow orange, then your first scene will probably be the river glowing orange. Next, you have decided you want them to learn that the orange color isn't natural and it's caused by pollution. So maybe you introduce your main character standing next to the river and have him talk about the pollution. Those two hows might make up your first scene, which I've circled here. So sometimes you have lots of different options and you have to make a decision. For example, we said next we want to introduce the audience to Millfield, the small town. So do you have your main character here walking through Millfield? Or would it be better to introduce a secondary character with their family or go to a local community event? There are no right answers, only creative decisions. But by doing this work on a paper first, it helps you to work through all your potential ideas to decide what you actually want. You will often reach sticking points, moments where you worry about the film, it isn't going to flow or lacks emotion or drive, or the story is hard to understand. At that point, go back to the what column and change the order of ideas again. Add in new ideas, cut things. Remember, nothing is set in stone here. You can also be as ambitious as you want here in a paper version of your film within reason, and then scale it back when you start to work out logistics. I am sending out an exercise in the chat. Some ideas are for our first exercise to learn how to fill out our storyboard. I'll count again, like how many participants we're having right now to decide whether we need to break into break rooms. Oh, just have one more.
Yes, I've just noticed Sam is joining us. So we have 1,
Wonderful.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people.
Wonderful. I think then we're going to break into 2 small groups and make our own storyboard. And just, yeah. I think I will send the storyboard again because for Sam who just joined us. So Sam, this is our storyboard template that you'll work on in a minute with other group members. So for this exercise, let's take a made-up idea for a different film, one which is much simpler and more straightforward than The Beautiful Poison. So,
Sorry,
sorry,
I have to take a doctor's appointment soon, so I don't want to, and it might be 5 or 10 minutes on the phone. So
Okay.
just to let you know that in terms of my participation.
Gotcha. Sorry, Max, can you advance to the next slide?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, so this is the exercise. So this film, it's a portrait of a street artist, someone who sneaks out in the middle of the night to paint huge, beautiful pictures in surprising places. But he keeps his identity completely hidden, so no one knows who he is. And this artist by day has the most boring office job ever. No one would ever guess that he is the night artist. So let's leave aside any worries about the ethics of this. Like, let's assume he's in a place where his paintings are legal and everyone in the community loves it. So let's imagine you've already worked on your treatment and decided to make a light, hopeful 10-minute documentary aimed at young people with an interest in street art. So you've decided to focus on one character, the night artist, and you have the opportunity to film him anytime, day or night, over a period of a few weeks. So once you're broken into 2 different groups, you're going to imagine that you are the directors making this film. You're going to fill in a storyboard for the opening scenes of this film. And don't worry about logistics or a budget, just think about the story. Discuss and agree on your ideas first, and then just focus on 2 columns, the what and how. And maybe have someone in group to take some notes of discussion so that you can present the idea later once everyone is back into the session. To help, I just sent in the chat that a list of possible ideas of what's and hows. You don't have to use all of these, and you can cherry pick, you can add your own. We're just providing these ideas to make this example really straightforward. Next slide, please. So first, you need to think about what facts and ideas you will introduce to the audience first. And then in the what column, put them in an order which works for your story, not necessarily chronologically order, but perhaps one which creates tension or mystery. And then once you've decided all those, move on to how you want to say it. Have a look at the possible scenes and choose some which help you tell the story you have laid out. Think about if you want your audience to understand right away that Jim is the night artist and what your inciting incident is. So I think Ashley here will help assign you into 2 different break rooms, and please have someone to take notes during the discussion, and then everyone will come back together to the session and discuss what each group decided to do. And you've got 10 minutes to discuss and then 10 minutes to share your ideas when we're back to the session.
So we'll come back
Is that
in
good?
10 minutes. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
And should people turn on their videos so they can see each other while they talk in their groups?
I think that would be better.
Yeah.
If you feel comfortable.
So Ashley will be just randomly putting people into groups, so stand by for that. This is a new experience for me. I've never broken out in a group in Zoom before.
Wonderful. So I think we'll continue at it's 1:16, 1:17 for you, like in 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, I also grab some water.
2:17. Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's 2 hours. Okay, thanks, Max. Just go with water.
Everybody's in a group now?
Yep,
Amazing. Way to go. Thank you.
everyone has to join themselves, so I mean, they can still hear talking through something.
Max. I think we're maybe about to hit the 10-minute.
Yes, Ashley set the timer on, so
Oh,
I guess-
nice.
I guess
Yay.
it will be at the end of 10 minutes very shortly.
Amazing.
51 seconds, 50 seconds, it
Yes.
says. And would you like the screen to be shared still, or would you like me to pause the screen sharing
Oh,
after
you can.
people come out
Yes.
of the breakout?
Sounds good. Maybe we
Okay.
pause for a minute.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
can. I see a button that says pause share, so I can probably do that. I'm working a
Yes.
couple of different computers, so,
Oh, okay.
and I'm not familiar with the technology.
I'm also not familiar with breakout rooms, but
Oh,
it looks really cool.
okay. Learn something every day. Okay,
Yes. Great.
7 seconds, 6. It's a countdown, like a blast off.
Okay.
Bung, open all rooms.
Amazing.
Yeehaw. And pause share.
I'll
hit-
come back.
It still says we're being invited to join breakout rooms.
Oh, sorry about that. Should
Yeah.
we close all the rooms? I will close all the rooms. Oh, okay. Now I hit pause the sharing, but what I'm seeing is just I'm still seeing the document being shared. What are you
Sorry, Alex.
seeing, Echan?
Yeah. Um,
Do you see
sorry.
everybody?
I am seeing the document, the point,
Okay.
but I can also see everyone. Okay, I think we can also
Is it
do like
okay the way it is, or should I get rid of the document?
if you can get rid of the document, it would be better, but if not, I think we can also just see the speaker when someone speaks. Nice. Okay. Welcome
How's
back,
that?
everyone. So yeah, so in real life, we wouldn't recommend starting the storyboard as a team. So it makes sense for one person, the director, who hash it out on their own first. But let's see what you come up with. Who wants to share first?
Don't be shy, you guys. Somebody stick up their
Yes.
hand. Michael.
Hello.
Hi.
I didn't know there were going to be exercises before, but here we
Now
are.
you know.
I'm not sure how to describe who else was in my group. It was myself, Robert, Suzanne, but a few of us here. We just decided on kind of the opening. So we decided after talking through, all the pieces of the possible what and how, that we would start with the streets of small town are silent and empty after midnight until dawn. And then the night artist works quickly and quietly, completely alone. They're dressed in black with a mask, as kind of like the 1 and 2. And just to kind of build up the intrigue of what the audience is seeing, like whether or not they're watching somebody, is it a crime? Like, what are they doing out at night? And then the next part that we got to for the how was just stating that a man stalks through quiet streets of small town at night, dressed in black, wearing a mask. He looks left and right before sneaking through a small alley. The streets are empty and the night is dark. We only kind of got to the beginning, so that's where we ended up. But yeah, and Suzanne had an idea about just kind of showing like close-ups of this person's hand on the can, and like just building up the intrigue of what they're about to see. And we discussed showing the kind of working through that, and then showing the next step as the painting, like this big painting, and for them to realize that it is an artist at work, and then go from there.
Were there things that you guys didn't agree on, like have very different ideas?
No, I think what was taking a while is just, you know, going through all the different options that were there. And actually one we did change it a bit, because like in my mind at first, just reading it through quickly, and a couple of us, we thought, okay, maybe show the painting first, like show like the art first and kind of draw people in this way. But then after talking about it, to build up intrigue, it made more sense to show, you know, this person, focus on them and show what action that they're taking, and you know, have people question that.
Mhm.
That was good.
Anyone else want to share?
Well, it was definitely a lot to process here. I think there was lots of
Mm.
information to go through quickly, and then to be put in that room and then share ideas when you didn't really make up your mind on anything yet. So like it was challenging, very challenging, but it was
Yes.
fun that we managed to put something together.
Yeah, that's what it was supposed to be. It's like it's not enough time for you guys to really come up with something solid, but it's like brainstorming, collective, listen to what other think about this. It's actually a lot of work just to do the storyboard, think about things. What about the other group?
Good job, Michael.
Share. Yes, good job.
Well, is my mic on?
Yes.
So what we did, well, Tova was doing a lot of the initial kind of reining us in and getting us organized and kind of getting oriented with what the actual project was. And then Kim came up with a kind of, I think Tova had asked like for the opening scene, we kind of got directed to that. And then Kim had a suggestion. Can't remember what she said completely, so I don't know if Tova wants to say something about that. But my suggestion was to open with the guy with the black toque. You see the back of his head and neck, put on his jacket, grabbed his backpack, shoving spray paints in there, and you see him look up at the clock, and then there's a window and the moon, so it's establishing that it's nighttime and he's running out the door. And then the next storyboard, he's using a nail scrubber and scrubbing paint off his hands and from underneath his nails. And that's as far as I got with it. But
And I think also Kim was talking was reinforcing what you both of you were talking about, the same thing of just sort of focusing on, you guys were talking about like the painting, the action of it, you know, not seeing the end result, but just sort of having some person doing something that there's still a mystery of what's happening, but they're doing something. And then I guess kind of moving on to then the sort of contrast of just this boring town that is probably not full of nature, just a very dull place with maybe dull people or seemingly dull people, to sort of give the contrast as well.
Interesting. So like, as you can see, there are like lots of different ways to tell the same story. You sort of, I think the what seems to be like pretty similar between the two groups, but like how you present that idea, it's pretty different approaches, which is like very interesting. I think so we'll move on, and we'll talk about filling the rest of the storyboard like later. Max, would you like to share the screen again?
I will try.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope you find the exercise fun and helpful. We'll have another one coming up.
How's that? Are we at the right slide? I think we're at 26.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can you advance to the next one, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Yes. So, however polished your treatment and your research, there will still be things that you don't know about your story or can't know until you get on location and start rolling. And that is great because in documentary, you want unexpected and surprising things to happen in front of a camera. It's what brings your film to life. But don't let those unknowns derail your process now. It's important to identify what you don't know and have a plan in place for different scenarios. You need to be confident enough to make guesses about what will happen and write your best guesses into your storyboard. Next slide, please.
Sorry,
Yes.
there was a delay here.
Yes, it's good. Thank you. So I think it's the one before. Sorry, Max.
Yeah, it's just giving me a little spinning circle thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll just start. So let's talk about sound bites. So try not to write vague things like John reacts, but instead make your best guess about what John's emotional reaction will be at that moment. So instead, try John looks delighted and says tearfully that this is the best day of his life. And that gives you a much clearer vision of what the mood, framing, and music for this moment might be and where it fits in the wider film. So you won't tell John that you're expecting him to be both delighted and tearful, and you definitely won't tell him what to say. But if you know him well enough to know that this is a big positive moment for him, and you write that into your storyboard as an important moment in your film, then that will help you to plan your shots, your interview questions, and other aspects of your shoot accordingly, like putting your camera in the best place to capture his visual expression when the moment you're expecting happens.
There's a
So,
question from Alex in the chat.
oh,
He's
sorry. Okay.
stuck up his hand, Alex.
Yeah,
Hi.
yeah, Max, this is actually for Max. If you wanted to put that in full screen, you can just go to view and choose full screen there if you wanted to put that up, make it larger. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Um,
You guys
I will.
down full screen mode. It's just a little further
Yeah,
down.
but Alex, let's just let each hand deliver the workshop. I'll struggle with this as I can. Just
Also, like, what Max has is not a PowerPoint. It's a PDF file, so it's a little different. Making it full screen.
can I get a hand, please?
I will
You want
send
this
out
slide or the next?
the slide is good. I will send out another handout in the chat.
Okay.
It's the storyboard. Okay, here you go in the chat. So it is the Beautiful Poison storyboard here. You can find in chat. And let's advance to the next slide. And actually, I will share, as I mentioned, I will share the trailer of this short film that we've been talking about this whole time. And then I think all of us can watch our own, like it's just a little more than a minute. And we'll come back and talk about it so that just to avoid streaming problems.
Has everybody viewed the video?
Yep.
Right, so I will continue. This is like actually giving you guys some ideas of, visually about the story. And we're actually also talking about the treatment, the actual storyboard. I just sent in the chat. It's so as you can see, like this is quite detailed. The finished storyboard is quite detailed. You're essentially like creating your whole film right here on the page. So it might take quite a few drafts. And you want to see your film as a set of moving parts. Each scene or even a moment within a scene is a separate block. So move the blocks up and down as you need to make the story better, and play with the idea of not being too linear if it can benefit the story. And gradually you will fill out more of the columns, adding more detail about the visuals, sound, and music. And as I said before, this session is more about the content rather than style of your scenes. But as a director, you will also need to think just as much about the framing of each shot, your choice of lenses, camera movement, light, and sound, all decisions about what you want the audience to see, hear, and feel. Even the time of day you shoot can change how the scene feels. Next slide, please. Thank you. So a couple more points about the storyboard documents. Once you filled out your storyboard, it should feel like you've got everything that's in your head down on paper. But this document is not just for you. Next, you have to let the rest of your crew see it. So it can be really difficult to communicate what you mean to people who can't see inside your head. So it's a good idea to be as detailed as possible in language that's as specific as possible. Err on the side of over-communication of ideas. So let other people into this process as early as you can. Ask your collaborators to scrutinize the film and make sure you have a joint vision of what you want to achieve. Next slide, please. Okay. Yes, Michael, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like I just wanted to make sure I understand it properly. So for the storyboard itself, it seems like the what is pretty specific in parts, like what we learned. So some of those like sound bites that we're seeing, like that they've written out, a specific part, is that because they've had these like mini conversations, like coffees and stuff with the characters beforehand? Is that what we're assuming that they've done? Like they haven't filmed any part of the documentary at this point. They've just had these mini conversations, and that's what those pieces are based on.
Exactly. And also I think for short films, like, so this session is really talking about the story, but like in reality, you need to think about budget, right? And then you only have quite limited time, especially for shorts to film. So you think about what you want certain people like to talk about, and like these are the points you want them to say. We'll talk about that later. But this is the things that the directors already have had like in their heads, like this is what they need for the film. So that may not be exactly the words, but this is what's needed.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Right, you're welcome. Also, like, do you want to take a short break, get some water, or stretch your legs for a little bit, or are we good to continue? Just want to see, because we're about an hour in. We're good? Anyone? Okay.
I'm just like Max, that like there's some of us in the accelerator program who are supposed to be at the fire hall at 3:30, and this is scheduled to go till 3:30. Do you recommend that we stay with this and then be late for the fire hall?
Yes, I think if you're a few minutes, if you're a few minutes late for the fire hall, I'm sure that'll be fine, Kim.
Okay, I live out of town.
Right.
It takes about 20 minutes to drive in, but with warming up the car, so it might be, I might
Okay.
Maybe send
Then
a
let's.
note to Naomi about that.
okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Also, we won't take the break then. We'll just go on with the slide. And Mac, can you advance to the next one? Next slide. Thank you. So so in the previous module, you got your film down on paper, and if you were doing this for real, a few days or weeks could have gone by. You could have run it past your team and added more notes on visuals and sound, and you would probably swap things around several times because you realize things don't quite make sense or there's a slightly better way to do it. But it's good to take a break from it for a few days and then come back with fresh eyes to work out what you've missed. Yes, and then now this is the best version of your film you will ever have. So everything fits together beautifully. People answer questions nicely and say exactly what you hope they will. The shots in your mind are perfect. And now your film is about to hit the cold, hard reality you're about to start shooting. So from this point on, it's about adapting to whatever happens in front of the camera. You need to be ready to change anything and everything from your storyboard, to react to the unexpected and let go of the perfect version that only ever existed in your head. So next slide, please. But how do you decide what questions you will ask on set and what visuals you want to capture, and how do you pivot when things don't quite go according to plan? Guess what? Even if you think you are actually still not ready to shoot. Time for more planning. Next slide, please. So before you start shooting interviews, it's a good idea to write a list of questions. You don't want to stick rigidly to those questions. Your interview should flow more naturally like a conversation, but it helps to have thought through the framing of each question in advance. It also acts as a checklist of topics you need to cover so you don't miss anything. To write this list, look back at every soundbite you wrote in the what section in your storyboard and write a question or two that might prompt your interviewee to get that answer. I think that's exactly the section like Michael was talking about and asked about. Next slide, please. Yeah, so here are some tips on how to frame those questions before you try on your own. First, make sure you ask open questions to make your subject answer more fully. Ask each question as if you don't know the answer, even if you do, from the mini conversations you have with them. And then remember, your audience is hearing about this all for the first time, so they need a subject to explain everything as clearly as possible. And as an aside, and from a market perspective, having your characters explain things clearly and offering the right amount of context in an accessible way makes it more likely to appeal to an international audience and gives your film an international marketability it might not otherwise have, which could help its exhibition and sales. And make your questions conversational so that it feels like a two-way chat. But once you've asked the question, stop talking and let them answer. This can feel unnatural, especially if there is silence while they gather their thoughts, but also never ask two questions at the same time. And of course, don't put words into your subject's mouth or tell them what to say. Not only is it unethical, it will sound more engaging if you're using they're using their own words. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Can we go back to the previous one? Sorry about that. Thank you. Let's take an example from Beautiful Poison. Like, here is what the storyboard says. It's the color of death. Everything the water touches has been killed off. There used to be life here. Now there's nothing. This is how the filmmakers in their storyboard hoped John, the main character and artist, would explain how polluted the rivers in his area are. If you were doing the interview, what questions would you ask to get answers like this? Anyone?
I guess a question would be, when you see orange, what does orange represent to you? What does it mean?
Good one.
For this specific soundbite, I would ask them, could you please describe the color of the water here and what it has done to the life in the surrounding areas?
Thanks. But maybe you want to like divide that into 2 sections rather than, yeah, it's always better to ask one question at a time. So next slide, please.
Yeah, Kim contributed an answer on
Oh,
the
nice.
chat. How do you feel
Okay.
when you look at the river?
That's a really good one. It's asking about feelings. That's a great one. So we can, yes. So you can see, like, these are the questions the director actually did ask. Can you describe from an artist's perspective what the rivers look like? Can you remember what you thought or how you felt when you saw these orange rivers for the first time? And culturally, we don't usually associate that with such bright colors. As an artist, is that something you ever think about? Yeah, I think these are great questions also because it's like more also specific to John being an artist. Yeah. Okay. We next slide, please. So when you're putting your questions together, the order is very important. Generally start with the easiest and least important questions first. So almost everyone needs a few minutes to warm up and relax into an interview, even if they're very experienced at talking on camera, and especially if they're not. You might want to have a couple of easy questions at the beginning that you don't think you will use, perhaps asking them some open questions about themselves, their life, their work, before you get on to the topic of your film. And put any challenging or difficult questions in the middle of your interview after your subject has relaxed, but they still have energy, unless there is any chance that they might walk out, in which case you might want to save them to the very end. And make sure you listen to people's answers and follow up on anything interesting. So some of the best sound bites for your film will come from questions you didn't know you had. And always end on something light and hopeful. A good end question is always to think about the future, like what do you hope the next step will be? Where do you think this project will be like in 5 years, etc. Next slide, please. A little note here on how to make your subjects comfortable. People will give much better answers if they feel relaxed. Every situation is different, but generally you want to make the interview feel as informal as possible. Be light, tell them something about yourself. Try not to let the conversation draw on what the interview is about before it starts. It's better to start fresh once the camera is rolling. And some people like to know what you're looking for before they begin, but usually it's better not to show them your storyboard or a list of questions. For most people, the more prepared or rehearsed they are, the less natural their sound bites will feel. And we assume in this exercise that we have to express consent of the subjects to film and ask questions. Next slide, please. So as well as doing interviews, you also need to think about what visuals you are going to capture. Like making a list of questions, it also makes sense to write a shot list in advance. Your storyboard should help you with this. It can act as a checklist of shots that you need to tell your story. And like your questions, they shouldn't be too rigid. It's also important to know everything you can about the location and setting before you head out. If you can do scouting before the shoot, even better. And make sure your crew know everything that you do about the shoot and location so they can be prepared too. Next slide, please. As a general rule, get your safety shots first. So these are the ones that you definitely need and which will definitely work out. That means wide establishing shots to set a scene, shots of any action that's crucial to your story, and any other safe static shots that you can use to tell the story. Get those basics in a can before you move on to anything more experimental and shoot anything involving your characters first, including interviews, because you never know when people will be caught away. Then you can shoot B-rolls at your leisure. And remember to consider the light, the weather, and anything else that could bring a sudden end to your shoot. Next slide, please.
If we can step back for a second, Robert
Of course.
has a question on the chat. Lots of interviews ask for the questions ahead of time, or sometimes an interview subject will say, well, ahead of time, you know, you're lining it up. They'll want to know what the questions are so they can think about it and be prepared.
I think it's also really depends on the film you're trying to make. And again, like, you know, like, is it more I think it's also like different from shorts to feature, and how much time you have and how specific you want the answers to be. It's all like quite different. Today we're really talking about a more controlled situation scenario and making for a short, and it's actually very different. It can be quite different making a feature. And I think it's also depends on the people that you talk to, like your interviewee. People talk differently, react differently. I think you need to think about, like, for that specific person, whether it's better for that person to get prepared or not. And I think it's just whatever gets you to have like the final interview, like soundbites to sounds natural. I think that's the way you want to go. Does it answer it? Thank you. Sorry, what do you mean by like PR first? Do you want to?
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna stop typing and just start talking. Well, sometimes if you want, if you want to talk, let's say interview somebody that's famous, like you're probably
like
gonna have to go
celebrity.
through their agents or something like that. That's gonna say, okay, what's the questions you're gonna ask?
Exactly. Then you don't really have an option if that's,
Okay.
you know, if that's the situation. And I think it's depends on how famous that person is and also that person's personality. And I think if I were the director, I think I won't show all my questions on that list.
Yeah, there's gonna be
I
some
will still
surprises, some surprises at
exactly.
the end.
Yeah, but I
Yes.
mean, some team would get mad. You
for sure.
also really have to, you know, assess the situation and like where you want to ask, like when and where, and you definitely want to keep that at the very end because they're pissed off, and then if you ask like that's the third question and they're like, okay, we're over, like that wouldn't be good. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, because sometimes let's say like pollution like this, like a big company CEO who's probably gonna go through PR before you can ask any questions. And then down the road,
Right.
if you make him walk off the set, it might just be good for your video for viral factor because like you get some surprises and he doesn't want to answer the questions.
Yeah, also I think it's just ethically, by asking surprising questions, we're not trying to trap anybody. Like this is not, also it's like different films. If it's a journalistic film, it's also a different approach, right? And you may work out a like different tactic than the film like we are talking about today. Yeah, so it really depends on what kind of films you make, and then the person, the company, and it's different strategies you need to come up with. Interviews are pretty tricky. I think it's trickier than a lot of people may think.
I also think there's a lot of magic in because when you're shooting someone and just them thinking about an answer can be a very important shot in the end, you know, of them not speaking but just them thinking about it.
Yeah, silence is always good. I love silence. Like
yeah,
it's silence a lot of time is better than an answer a lot of the time.
yeah, and so that's the beauty, I think, in some ways, of them not knowing the question, because it forces them to think about it in their mind, and then you're filming that, and so you could be getting some very important emotion and or just expression. So
Exactly. That's very beautifully said. Exactly. Yes. Okay.
So back to shot list.
Okay, thank you also for sharing, Tova. We will, okay, where were we? Okay. I think, okay, I'll share the last handout today, which is a shot list. It's the actual shot list from, wait, oh, sorry, it's on the next slide, I think. Yes.
There we go. Ground shots, aerials, underwater.
Yes. So here is an example of a shot list from the opening scenes of Beautiful Poison. The filmmakers had 3 different camera options: on the ground, aerial from a drone, and underwater phone camera with a waterproof case. So time wasn't a factor in this case. They had all day. So it's a mix of wide establishing shots, close up, static shots, and tracking or on the shoulder shots. Some of these ideas were speculative. So the filmmakers didn't know if they would work, but thought they could look good. The list starts with the safest shots, the ones most critical to telling the story, and end with more experimental shots, like the underwater phone shots, which were only used for a few seconds in the final film. Next slide, please. So one more thing to bear in mind when you're planning your shoot is the location of your interviews. You may not want all your characters to be in the same place. It might be boring visually. It takes a lot of work, but before you start, you should work out which locations are most relevant to each idea. Your storyboard should help with this again. Then you can split the interviews up between those locations. Also think about whether your subjects can be doing something or moving during the interview to bring the action to life. You may still want to sum things up with one long sit-down interview, which asks all your questions at the start or end of your shoot to cover your bases. The advantage of this is you can ask questions in a relaxed way while more easily controlling the setup and sound. Next slide, please. So let's do another activity. Let's work in our same groups again. And let's think back to that simpler film, the one we made up about the night artist. So part 1, you've secured an interview with Jim, the night artist himself. You're planning to do a sit-down interview with him, and you'll be relying on this interview to provide the main narration for the film. So on a new sheet of paper, plan your opening questions. Based on your what's and how's we did early, maybe you can spend a little more time on this. And so include all questions, even technical ones, designed to make Jim feel more comfortable. But also think about the main things you want Jim to say in your film and how you will frame your questions to get the sound bites that you storyboard. Once you've written a list of questions, discuss what order you want to ask them in. And then part 2 of this exercise is on a separate sheet of paper, choose 1 or 2 scenes from your storyboard for the night artist and write down the desired shot list. Try to think through everything you may need to make the scene work. If you have time, you could put these in order too, with the most crucial shots first and the more experimental ones that might not work last. If different people in a group have different visions for the film, that's fine. Just make 2 lists. I think, so for this time, maybe we would allow like 15 minutes. And then Ashley will again help assign you into your same groups now. And again, questions on one sheet and shot list on the other. Probably, I think we would just do the opening scenes you guys have worked on. So you have 15 minutes to work on this and then 10 minutes to present afterwards.
Okay, so we're back to Jim the artist, not the Beautiful Poison.
Yes, we're back to Jim the artist.
And 15 minutes.
There
And
you go.
do you mean the shot list? What shot list do you need based on the like while you're asking him the questions?
No, like the shot list of for I think you guys only had the time to talk about the beginning of the film. The exercise was supposed to be like choosing from one of the things, the scenes. But I think it's just let's just work on the opening scene.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay. Great. Go.
And go.
I didn't get an invitation for the breakout room.
Yeah. Yes, Robert is.
Yeah, just stand by. Actually, Robert needs to go in the breakout room. I guess he wasn't there before. And
Also,
same with
yeah.
Agnes.
Mm.
Okay.
I was in the previous one, but
Okay, just stand by. It's a little technical thing.
maybe it's because I got logged out earlier.
Could be.
I think Robert's in a room now.
And then Agnes.
Agnes, do you want to be in a room or you're not there?
Hello, I'm
Hello,
I'm here. I'm actually at work, so I'm kind of like listening with like one ear and doing some work. So I'm
I
in
see.
between. I'm okay just listening. So
Okay, no
sure,
breakout
you
room
can
for
throw
you.
me into a room, but I will not be able to like participate.
Maybe just
Okay.
the same one as before.
So Agnes says she'd like to be in a room, but she'll only listen.
Yes.
Okay, you should have an invitation there shortly, Agnes.
Okay.
Nice.
There we go.
Max, do you know these filmmakers well? Like, are they
I know some
local?
better than others. You know, there's
Mm.
some I'm just meeting for the first time.
And they're like local filmmakers?
Well, I believe Alex is in Nova Scotia.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
So where he came from, I don't know, but he registered for industry. I think
Okay.
everybody else is pretty much in Whitehorse or close by Whitehorse.
It's a very tight filmmaking community there.
It's small, yeah. We're a small, fairly small town, 30,000 people, and
3,000 people.
I don't know everybody, you know, really well, but I know some well and some, you know, just acquainted.
Right. And like how many documentary filmmakers are there?
Well, a lot of people work in documentary or short drama. There's not a lot of big
Oh,
productions or series going on, although
right.
some people are, you know, heading in that direction.
Okay. And are they mostly working on local stories or like Canadian stories?
Often it's a Yukon-based
Yukon.
story, either
Okay.
contemporary or historic or maybe something else. It's quite a diverse community. People are working on all kinds of stuff. It's amazing what they do.
Amazing. Oh, okay. I should watch out more for because I am still relatively new to the Canadian landscape and I just
Hmm.
really want to learn more because I grew up in China and I
Hmm.
moved to Canada 6 years ago. So, um, and I just, yeah, I'm not that familiar, but I really, really want to learn. And I feel like different, like in different areas, like regions and films can be very different. Yeah. And
Hmm.
sometimes I think we don't get enough access or opportunities to watch films like from outside Ontario
Yes.
or you know, like, yeah, yeah,
I understand what you're saying.
yeah. And I hope I can
Here, we
have more.
sometimes feel like we're quite disconnected from
I
the rest of the
know.
country, especially the major
Mm,
centers like Toronto, Montreal, even Vancouver. It's only a
right.
2 hour plane ride from here.
Mm,
And you know, people go back and forth quite a bit, but it depends on your work and your family connections and, you know, your world. Uh, but there's, you know, we have a lot of creative talent here, and we really
mm.
are trying to lift up the skill level, but we do not have the access, you know, to training and programs and professional development as much as
Right.
others. But we do have,
Mm,
you know, this festival, this industry forum, and there are other things that organizations are doing, and they host training events and that sort of thing, and
mm.
people are acquiring skills as they can, and of course experience every time they tackle another production.
Right. Do you think the filmmakers there know about Hot Docs funds? Because I'm also like I only started with Hot Docs last September, so I'm like
Mhm.
familiarizing myself with it. But I was involved with part of like the processing and reviewing process of Ted Rogers and Cross Current Canada just a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering because we don't see applications from Yukon that much, and I don't know whether like it's people don't know about it, or I mean I would love to see more applications and see it's just yeah, like we
Well,
also
I
used to have yeah, sorry,
well, I
yeah.
can tell you from personal experience that sometimes there's so many funds out there, it's hard to find something that is what you're looking for.
Mm,
The benefit of this kind of industry forum, like yesterday, we had a whole day of sessions from different broadcasters, funders,
nice.
you know, Telefilm, CMF, Knowledge Network, Crave, CBC Docs, comedy, drama,
Wow.
level film,
Yes,
distribution.
Robin.
You know, it's these sorts of things. And tomorrow morning, our keynote address will be by Joy Lowen of the National Screen Institute. And
Amazing.
they are doing a lot of training these days. So it's
Oh, nice.
these kind of forums that really present people with opportunities.
Hmm.
And then everybody's in the game of, okay, well, what's the right fund? What is the application deadline? What are the criteria? What do they need? Can I focus my time
Exactly.
and energy to present a very good application in time?
You're
You
so
know,
right.
it's these
Yes.
sorts of things that are the everyday realities of most of the filmmakers.
Because so one after I moved to Canada, because a part of the reason I moved here was, I was working in the TV station, like public TV station in China, and then I became really interested in creative documentary, which, like China is so much censorship and I couldn't really do it. So, and I knew about the Canadian system and the funding system and everything, like vaguely. So I just thought, okay, I would come and see what the world is like. But so I was an independent producer for 5 years, and I
Okay.
find it's such a struggle just to
Mhm.
get access to information. Like I even like as for someone I didn't grow up here, I didn't study here, just for me to know about our council funds. I think I only knew it on the fourth year or fifth year I'm here, and then just as you said, just to know about these funds, which are changing almost all the time. And
Yes, there's that.
then just, yeah, and then to, like you said, it's just application. You spend so much time just writing application, fundraising. It's really, yeah, it's a lot of work. I'm also like, so apart from my job here, I'm still like producing um in my own time,
Okay.
which is like I think Hot Docs also I think they allow the flexibility, which I'm like very grateful for. But also I
Hmm.
think they want someone to be in the team who has hands-on experience and who understands the struggle. And then for me, I think I also really want to understand, for example, like this opportunity, like what struggles or challenges that filmmakers in Yukon are facing, which I may not be aware of and which I could be helpful, you know? I don't know.
Yes. Well,
Mm.
it's good that you have one foot in the world of independent filmmaker, because
Yeah.
that certainly grounds you in the reality of things that people are dealing with in terms of trying make their projects go forward, you know?
Right. Do you think the filmmakers in Yukon are still have less like access to certain resources or information?
Well, I think because we're in a remote area, you know, we're just not in the mainstream. And, you know, the community being fairly small, you know, there's only so much information that gets passed around in conversation and just people rubbing shoulders with each other at different places. So,
Right.
but it, you know, there's a 48-hour film competition they do here every fall, and I gotta say, I went. There were, I think, 10 films out of Dawson City, which is a town of like 2,500 people, tiny.
10
And
films.
there were
Ooh.
10 teams entered in the 48-hour, and then there were 20 from Whitehorse. And
whoa.
I was really impressed with the quality. You know, what people did in 48 hours, like obviously some people planned well ahead and, you know, focused their efforts very efficiently, but it was really quite impressive.
Wow.
Overall, you know, there's some really stellar material. So that I find is very encouraging. The creative talent of people here is quite high. And it's a good
Yeah.
community here for the arts in general. And
Nice.
we're doing what we can to kind of lift up everybody in terms of the screen industry and getting more opportunities to make the films they want to make.
Amazing. Yeah, if you can think of anything, you know, like we can support whatever, yeah, just let me know, let us know.
Mhm.
Yeah, I also feel like we are so far, like I know films or filmmakers from Ontario like so much better than other
Yeah,
areas. Um, anyways, I'll grab some water. Nice to chat.
sure. Yeah, it's great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, breakout rooms, you're coming out of your rooms. There's Yi-chan.
Hey, welcome back. So, who want to share? What are some of your key questions? What shot list do you have? Okay, Michael.
All right, so for the key interview questions, our group came up with, for one, tell me about your choice to paint in the middle of the night. Tell me about a situation where you've been caught or almost caught. We wanted to know for him to tell me about why you are anonymous. Tell me about how you became an artist. Could you describe yourself from the point of view of how others see you? And tell me about how you feel that your art impacts the community. And could you describe yourself from your own point of view, basically?
Wonderful. And that's the order, or you didn't talk about the order yet? Like you kind of asked about the night artist thing up front.
Yeah, that's
Mm,
how we approach it.
that's the thought. Okay. And some of the shots you want to share?
Yeah, so for the shots, so this was just for the opening scene. We thought for one of the shots for having the painting to have an over the shoulder from behind when we do show the painting. We're not going to show the painting right away, but just for that part. If we had access to a drone, we do an overnight shot of the city at night with the alleyways. A wide shot down the alleyway at night. Cutaway shots of things in the alley, kind of lit by street lamps and the lights we have there. So like garbage cans or, like the wet road with the city lights. We also had an idea for medium close up of the artist's shadow in frame, and the same kind of close up for the feet movement. Through our discussion, we decided that if we could, we would not show the artist's identity through the film, like try to keep that, without showing anyone. So a lot of the shots I think would be close-ups that way. One interesting shot from inside the camera bag. So have a camera inside the bag and then have the can on top, and as the can comes out, show that. And a shot from behind plexiglass with paint going over it when he is painting. And yeah, lots of close-up shots without really showing, kind of keep that intrigue as and build that suspense. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Good job, team.
Great job. Yeah.
Thanks, Michael.
What about the other group? Want to share?
Well, we talked quite a bit, but we kept it kept turning into a drama,
What kind of drama?
Well, we sort of thought there was a little bit of a parallel with Superman and his secret boring life, and probably packs a sandwich, a healthy lunch, sandwich, an apple and carrots and celery, and then but then does the McDonald's drive-through on his way to do his painting. And so lots of close-ups of hands and leaving the office. Anyway, I think Tova can jump in too.
That sounds super fun.
It's silly.
Well, because it's possible that he does have that going on, right? Like possibly he does all sorts of different things in his nighttime than he does in his daytime. And so you could almost have this sort of dichotomy happening. I mean, possibly. But I think, a lot of in general, I think regardless, a lot of wide, closer close-up is going to happen in each scene, so that will parallel. So, we have the close-ups of his painting hands, and you have the, these different views of it becoming wider and wider, but then you also have the same at the office, let's say, of him doing something with clean hands at his office, opening his sandwich, whatever. and then again, wider office and context with other people, and then wider again. I like the idea of the other group in terms of, keeping his identity somewhat unknown. That's a pretty cool mystery. And then we were also as part of this thing. So in addition to the questions you guys were asking him, we thought about also, what inspires him to do the art. Why he doesn't want, you said also the anonymous thing. How does he choose his locations? What's his relationship to the people in the town? Are there any messages in his art? And also the whole side of the story of talking to the town people about, who do you think this is? Who, and having the interviews of them, like, who do you think, like, is it the local musician? Is it the guy in the supermarket that doesn't, and kind of having that element going on, playing a role in terms of the filming and so if you have him sitting with a group of friends at a coffee shop, like, you could have a shot with him there and the words going around, about who it is, or the opposite, all the other people talking. And so there's a lot of options in terms of that, but it could be a colorful character plot, thing of just the town, like, just being so wrapped up in this mystery, and almost to the point where if they found it out, it would kind of be probably a big letdown, just because the mystery would be over.
Right.
Also, like, in terms of shots, and maybe this is more of a drama, but like in the first session, I was saying, oh, wouldn't it be interesting that as he's spraying the paint, his body starts to come to his real color, from black and white to a real color. So maybe in the day, like black and white, and then in the evening, he turns to you see the color from just the joy of creating art, that it just.
It's really fun.
So that
Kim,
would be, that's almost
Yeah.
like something, depending on what age group is your audience, of how you might want to, you could do a young, version of this, where that could be more that sort of animation element to it.
Exactly, like what tone you want the film to be in.
Yeah.
Kim, do you work on narratives as well?
Which Kim?
You, sorry.
Well, I'm just like, I'm an emerging filmmaker. I've made like one documentary, and I usually make sort of stop motions for my music videos. Sorry. But I'm a songwriter, and I'm very visually oriented, and I when I'm writing, I'm trying to bring visuals into my songs. But anyway, that's kind of my history. But
yeah, I wish we got more time to know each other a little bit more. Yeah, so I'll just finish, because I know, like, you guys also have another session of this. We will just go on with this. Max, can you advance to the next slide? Okay, great. So thank you. So hopefully, if you are properly prepared, you should have some idea of what could go wrong. And remember those unknowns we talked about earlier. If you give them some thought, you might be able to put plans in place for different possible scenarios. But even the things you think are certain could unfold differently, for better or worse. So to cope with this, you need to keep your storyboard a living idea, and keep it in your head at all times, and consult a paper or digital version as often as is practical. As long as something changes, work out how it is going to fit into your film. Has something happened that would make an even better climax than the one you expected? You need to make sure that the scenes around it will still make sense, and shoot them differently if not. Has any interview gone badly? You need to decide if the answers you have are clear enough to explain the story and strong enough to carry your film. If not, you could reshoot the interview or work out something else to tell that bit of the story. And don't leave it until the edit. If your shoot is over multiple days, plan to spend your evenings or downtime watching footage back and working through your interviews. And over the course of your shoot, your storyboard should slowly evolve into an edit plan with the best shots and interview answers already highlighted and marked up. So when you get into the edit, you can use this as a starting point. Next slide, please. So one final thought about shooting. One of the most important things is your safety and security and that of your characters and crew. The process of ensuring your safety is quite similar to everything we have discussed here. Prepare and plan thoroughly in advance. Think through any unknowns or risks. Take advice from other people with more knowledge of the local area or event, and stay aware during your shoot to avoid anything not going as planned. Think particularly about obvious risks, such as working in hostile regions, in crowded places, at night, while driving, and be prepared to change your plan or leave the location if your safety is at risk. And in some cases, this might mean reducing your crew members to reduce the risk, or having hidden cameras instead of ones that will make your presence obvious, or having safe words or code words amongst your crew. Next slide, please. So you've returned from your shoot, and now it's time to use your storyboard to help you progress through a rough cut. Here are just a few quick tips that can guide you. Next slide, please. So step one is review. So watch all the footage back. You never know where a beautiful shot or moment may be nestled, and chances are it's somewhere where you least expect it. Before you start, ask your cinematographer or DP if there are any shots or moments they really liked or think should be in the film. Ask your producer too, even if you've already debriefed about the shoot on the journey home. It's always interesting how different team members reflect on a shoot. And step two, transcribe. A relatively mundane task, but essential. Just make sure you get all your spoken word transcribed in full. You may have had a PA taking notes as well on location to eventually provide to the editor as a resource accompanying the transcript. And step three, turn a storyboard into a script. Now you need to begin to decide what shots, soundbites, and scenes you're going to use in your rough cut. Use your storyboard as a guide. What are the key moments that must be in the film? Find those moments in the scripts, then copy the desired soundbite text into the storyboard. You'll also be jotting down a time code to the original footage for your editor to find that soundbite quickly. If you have multiple options for one moment or one soundbite, then copy them all across. One may become the obvious choice later in the process. Ideally, focus on the must-haves first, and then work through the gaps between them, as opposed to going purely chronologically. Next slide, please. So step four, decide how collaborative you're willing to be. Are you expecting to dictate a film shot by shot, or do you want the editor to bring their own thoughts to the table? Whatever you choose, be clear how you're going to work with your editor upfront. If it's a true collaboration, then establish a shared language. For instance, you may have non-negotiable directions for accuracy, but in other areas, you're happy for the editor to make decisions, like shot ordering within a particular scene. And step five is begin the edit. So the temptation is to sit in with your editor every day, but sometimes it's better to let them get a rough assembly together by themselves. The rough cut is just the start of the journey. If you're seeing the rough cut for the first time and haven't sat in with the editor, be cautious of your feedback. It's a creative process for them too, and they're human. If they haven't followed your directions, ask them why. There may be a good reason that you didn't know, such as an untimely jump cut in the shots you choose. Try not to ask yourself, is this a film I had in my head? But rather, is this the best this film could be? Normally, a team that works well together makes a great end product. So we're pretty much near the end of the presentation. I will first send you a worksheet on takeaways that summarizes the session. And then I'll send the Vimeo link of this case study film, Beautiful Poison. You can watch it now or you can watch it later.
I have a question, as far as documentaries, and if people are kind of in different places in the world, interviews were able to take place over something like Zoom. I did do that the other day with a friend, one of the subjects, and I recorded it, but it showed him and me. Is there a way or a recommended app or program for being able to record in quality visual, quality audio? And is that, or would it just look ugly in a documentary?
I'm just, for me, because I was just telling Max, so apart from my work at Hot Docs, I'm also like an independent producer, and then I can only speak from my own experience. So I love like the personal connection with people, and I have never done like interviews without me or the director being there. But I know like some people, for like sound purposes, some people send recorder, like a good recorder, to the interviewee so they can get good sound. And if the production allows, they will send like a DP to be there. And then I haven't personally done, anybody else, like I haven't personally done any like on-screen interviews. So I don't really know like what's the best solution for that.
Okay.
Well, I guess I'll see you soon, Kim, but I mean, in general, sound, as you know, as a musician, you know, you never want to mess up sound. That's the most important thing. If no one will forgive you for that. Nobody will want to listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you know, even if you're doing it like small scale, there's a way to do it with good quality. So that's, you know, and that's like another discussion you can have also like with some people from the Yukon Film Society and the SPI and all that.
Yeah,
and then, you know, and that is more important in a way than, because you can have a visual that looks rustic and this and that, but the sound is the most important in terms of it being good quality. And then, I mean, the best you can do is the best you can do, really. I mean, budget, skill, ability, time, you know, you're going to do the best you can. So.
Yeah,
Okay,
I also agree. Like sound is very important. And
I
also
don't
I
wanna-
think, sorry. Yeah.
I don't want to cut this off, but we are at time. So if people have any final comments, they could make them quickly, please, or go on the chat. And yeah, we're still looking for the link. Ichan, you said this is the Vimeo link, but I see
This is,
funds at Hot
yes.
Docs. I don't see a
Sorry.
Vimeo.
I think it's above.
Vimeo links there, yeah.
That's the final film for like Beautiful Poison. It's a beautiful.
Oh, there it is. Okay, it was above. It was above that. I just didn't see it there. Okay, my apologies, but I have it now. Thank you. So,
sorry, just very quickly, if you want to apply for funds at Hot Dogs, Ted Rogers Fund, Slate Family Fund, or like we have a new program incubator, just check our website. And if you have any questions, just email funds@hotdocs.ca. We're really good at replying to emails. Just, yeah, get in contact.
and we haven't had a request, but is it okay to share this deck, the slides with the participants today?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks
Yeah,
for
thanks.
joining the session.
And
Really
your name
appreciate it.
is
Thank you.
Yi Chen.
Yi Chen.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And just a final note, for the accelerator people, Daniel Jank has arrived here at the fire hall, so you guys will be expected here soon.